All right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions here for a little bit. The Lions obviously looking like one of, if not the best team in the entire NFC recently. We know the Lions dealt with a tough injury in the second half of last week's dominating victory, but they're taking a really smart approach of how they're going to handle it both this week and for the future as well. I think it's a smart move by Detroit. I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, this Lions squad, we all know they're playing really good football. They're playing at a very high level, both sides, offense, defense, those special teams in there as well. But as good of football as they've been playing, obviously the injury to Aiden Hutchinson, the serious injury, hopefully he's able to return next season at 110%. There's a hole to fill on this defense. How do the Lions go out and address it? How do they get their own players on the roster to adjust their scheme and personnel to try and do whatever they can to make up for that massive hole? Where Aaron Glenn's taken a really smart approach. Let's pull up this report and then we'll talk about it more on the other side. This is courtesy of 24/7 Sports. The Detroit Lions suffered a massive loss to their defense when Aiden Hutchinson went down with a leg injury in the third quarter of their Week 6 win. As a result, defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn is now tasked with finding an avenue to replace the production that the third-year Michigan product provided for the defense. Yet, Glenn doesn't want to put all the pressure to replace Hutchinson on one singular player as they gear up for a pivotal NFC North showdown with the Minnesota Vikings. It's tough to lose a player like Aiden, obviously. We all know the type of player he was. We all know the type of season he was having, Glenn said. Here's what we don't do. We don't ask guys to replace Aiden. Everybody's his own man, and everybody has their own traits and abilities. We ask those guys to be them. We try to put them in positions to be the best player they can be. This is an absolutely outstanding strategy by Aaron Glenn. I think one of the things that happens with injuries is there's sort of that blunt next man up. Aiden Hutchinson's hurt. All right, number two guy, you now have to be Aiden Hutchinson. That usually results in disaster. The Lions are taking a smart approach here, saying, listen, it's going to take all of us working together to do whatever we can to get as much production an aggregate as Aiden Hutchinson was providing as a single person. It's going to be a challenge, but Aaron Glenn's taking a smart approach here. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Lions fans in the comment section below got a massive NFC North showdown this week. You got you guys playing great football against the Minnesota Vikings, who no one has been able to beat yet. Maybe it's your turn to do the job, get it done, hand the Vikings their first loss. Give us your prediction, Lions, Vikings, final score in the comment section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this latest news out of Detroit?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is the right approach for Glenn to come out and say it this way because there's two ways that we see teams do things like this or cover for a player that's as big as Aiden Hutchinson, which is frankly impossible. First, they go out and they get their players and be like, all right, everyone, we need to get some guy on the edge. And because we all know how prolific of a pass rusher Aiden Hutchinson is, you got to be the same level of pressure and sacks that Aiden Hutchinson does, which isn't possible. And the second option is they go out. This is a line team that's really strong. I think they're really young. They've got a lot of good key pieces. They're set up really nicely for the future. But sometimes they're like, we're doing really good right now. We need to go out and leverage that right now and go get someone, in free agency or through trade, spend a lot of assets, spend a lot of dollars, and go try to replace Aiden Hutchinson, which I don't even think you can do that in free agency or through a trade right now either. People aren't letting those kind of players go, or they're not sitting in free agency. So I think that is important here as well. It seems like the Lions know both, hey, the guys on our roster, we can't expect them to be Aiden Hutchinson, and we don't need to go out and leverage our future to try to find the next Aiden Hutchinson. Not saying they might not go get somebody to help give them depth or fill a hole, but I just don't think they are going to try and get one guy and be like, all right, we got our new top tier pass rusher that's going to be on the field every single down. I don't think that that is going to be the case, which I think is good because when you look at Hutchinson, he's phenomenal. 95 overall pass rushing grade this year. Nobody can fill that hole. But there is a bright spot when I was looking at his breakdowns on his PFF scores. He only has a 70.6 run defense grade, which is pretty good, especially paired with that 95 pass rush grade. But it's not like otherworldly in the run defense game. So I think there's guys on this team that already can come in and step up and help in that run defense role the same way that he did. I think the key here is going to be, like you said, in aggregate, getting guys together to help fill that pass rushing role. And you've got guys on this team that have done pretty good in pass rushing as well. Yeah, DJ Reader, 73 overall passing grade. Aleem McNeil, 74.8. So I think there's a bunch of guys in the interior and on the edge that you can put together a bunch of average pass rushers to help get the overall effect of one Aiden Hutchinson. So I think a really smart approach by the Lions that is going to help them out down the road by not leveraging their future to try to replace someone that's frankly irreplaceable.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when's the last time someone had a big injury in the middle of the season and they traded for a veteran and it fixed all their problems, right? I can't remember off the top of my head. Usually it actually works the other way. Usually you trade for a veteran and things really quickly fall apart and there's no improvement, right? Because a lot about football is the scheme, culture, fit, everyone playing together, everyone understanding the role on the team. If you go out and trade for a big name defensive end to try and replace Hutchinson, you overpay for him. He comes in and suddenly what? You've got a guy trying to learn a new defense. You've got a guy trying to sync with this guy's up front, trying to figure out his playing time. Aaron Glenn trying to incorporate him. Maybe he's not a great fit culturally. We know how much Dan Campbell and Holmes really focus on that. And I think that's the real important takeaway here is that the Lions, this gives them exactly what they need. The Lions are now the favorite. I've said this the entire season, right? Going back to the middle of last year when they were playing really good football, Dane Campbell and the Lions were still treating themselves as an underdog. And I thought that was an interesting approach because they're really good, right? They're not the underdog anymore. They're really, really good. And now that we see through the first 5 games of the season for Detroit, is they're clearly not the underdog. I think they're the best team in the NFC right now, quite frankly. And so going forward, they needed something to give them that underdog scrappy mentality back. And I think this Hutchinson injury, as terrible as it is, as unfortunate as it is, allows this defense and really the entire team to be galvanized. We're still the underdog. Like the way they played that Cowboys game, especially in the second half, it was like a team that like thought they were 20-point underdogs and were just really trying to rub it in. And it's just like, it was kind of strange to me. It's like, you guys are the favorite. You guys were better than Dallas coming in, and you clearly proved it, right? We've seen it all season long. Detroit's really, really good, yet they've been playing a little bit at times like they still see themselves as the underdog. At a certain point, you have to kind of figure out exactly how much it's going to last. If you go 12-2, it's going to kind of hard to look yourself in the mirror and say, we're an underdog. But with this Hutchinson injury and their approach to it in terms of, hey, we're all going to focus on it as a team in aggregate, I think it allows them to keep that culture together. So it kind of gives them an opportunity to stay focused on what their goal is. They're the underdog. They're the team that nobody thinks has a chance, even though everybody thinks they're really, really good. But it allows them in that locker room to keep that mentality going. Obviously, losing Hutchinson's leadership, his production, his talent is incredibly tough. They're not as good of a football team with Hutchinson not there. That's undeniable. But it does give them something in that locker room, something to keep them focused, to keep them on task, to allow them to stay with that mentality, that Detroit versus everybody mentality that they really champion. And I think in the end, it could give them that extra fuel to power through a very long regular season and finish off a strong playoff run.